Hello friends, I am glad to see you again. Today I'm going to tell you about an HOA that wants me to give my neighbor my keys. I never expected the doorbell to ring at 6:30 in the morning on a Wednesday, especially not 2 weeks after closing on my forever house. The place was a sprawling, slightly eccentric craftsman. Think wraparound porch big enough for small-town parades, a turret the listing agent called a reading tower, and a detached carriage barn the inspector swore had outlived prohibition. I bought it because I'm a book editor who can work from anywhere, and I grew up in apartments where the ceiling felt like a lid someone kept screwing down tighter every year. Owning more square footage than a mid-range roller rink felt like finally breathing at full capacity. When the bell jolted me awake, I threw on sweats and padded to the foyer, humming the theme from one of those true crime podcasts where the host warns you not to open doors before coffee. On the other side of the stained glass panel stood a stern, middle-aged guy in cargo shorts, a neon HOA lanyard hanging like a sheriff's star. He didn't knock. He body-checked the bell again. "Morning," he said when I cracked the door half an inch. I answered with the universal greeting of the not-yet-caffeinated. "Huh? I'm Bram. I live 3 houses down. I sit on the architectural committee." He paused, waiting for recognition. None came. "We need the key to your place." I stared, wondering if the neon was frying his brain. "The only people who need a key are me, my security company, and the fire department." Bram tilted his head like a home improvement store owl. "You got 6 bedrooms. The covenant's discouraging waste of common resources say..." I cut him off. "My square footage was approved when the house was built in 1912. Nothing about wasting resources." "The board voted last night," he said, pulling a folded printout from his cargo pocket. "A neighbor may utilize unused rooms as auxiliary storage if the primary resident occupies less than 50% of the building." He smiled, proud of the bureaucratic haiku he'd just recited. "Let me guess," I said. "You're the neighbor." "Correct. My e-commerce side hustle needs a climate-controlled space for inventory. You can keep 2 rooms and the turret. I'll use the former billiards room." He tried to peer over my shoulder as if expecting to see shelving units already installed. At that point, my door did the talking for me. I shut it in his face, locked the deadbolt, and trudged to the kitchen where my espresso machine blessed me with perspective. The whole incident felt like a scene cut from an amateur sitcom, an HOA so power-drunk they'd confuse my house with a public warehouse. Surely it would blow over once the sane members woke up. I was wrong. By noon, my inbox had 3 emails from the HOA secretary, a retiree named Cressida, who treated Robert's rules like inspired scripture. The subject line of the last one read, "Final notice. Key surrender." Attached was the same vote Bram waved at me, this time with digital signatures under names I didn't recognize. Apparently, the motion passed unanimously in a Zoom meeting held at 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Despite the fact our state is 2 hours behind, the timestamp alone violated the bylaws. I replied courteously, citing our state's Homeowners Association Act, Section 7, Subsection D. Amendments affecting property entry require 90 days notice and a 2/3 vote of all owners, not a midnight ambush by 5 insomniacs. Then I went for a long run to bleed off the adrenaline. When I returned, a sticky note was plastered over my smart lock. "Turn over keys or we will obtain access. This is your final notice. Bram." I peeled the note free, photographed it, and texted the image to my best friend Fen, an attorney who moonlights as my legal fairy godparent. Fen's response, "That's conversion and criminal trespass. Keep documenting." "Want me to draft a cease and desist?" Me, "Hold off for now. Maybe they'll calm down." Fen, "People who write final notice before lunch do not calm down." I chuckled, but the queasy feeling in my gut lingered. I decided to install 2 extra cameras, one covering the driveway, the other aimed at the front porch. Our county allows exterior surveillance as long as it doesn't point through neighbors' windows, and I plan to follow the law to the comma. 2 days passed in relative silence. I edited manuscripts, took breaks to stain the porch swing, and tried not to imagine Bram measuring rooms with a laser pointer. Just when I relaxed, Sunday morning came crashing in like a bullhorn. I was FaceTiming my sister when red and blue strobes splashed across the living room. A patrol SUV rolled to a stop outside my garden gate. 2 deputies stepped out, hands resting on service belts, but with that bored demeanor of people sent to mediate someone else's nonsense. I met them on the porch, phone still in hand. "Ma'am," Deputy Harrow said, "we received a call claiming there's a medical emergency and the occupant of this address can't reach the door to let in assistance." Caller provided your name and insisted you keep a spare key in the electrical box. My eyebrows nearly reached the roofline. I'm the only occupant and I'm clearly upright. Harrow consulted his tablet. They also said the homeowner suffers from severe hypoglycemia and may be disoriented. I raised my latte in salute. Blood sugar stellar, thanks. The second deputy, Green, glanced at the camera above my head. Mind if we do a quick walkthrough, just to close the call? Come on in, I said, partly because I had nothing to hide and partly because I wanted official witnesses. While they looked behind doors to satisfy protocol, I noticed movement at the curb. Bram prowled beside his pickup, phone glued to his ear, flicking anxious glances toward my entryway. When the deputies emerged, healthy homeowner in tow, he plastered on a grin that could have served as a warning label for bad intentions. Harrow asked, "You the reporting party?" Bram puffed his chest. "Yes, officer, I was deeply concerned." "You told dispatch you heard cries for help," Bram faltered. I thought I did, through an open window." "All windows are shut," Green replied. Bram pivoted, new tactic. "As HOA representative, I need the key for her safety. If she gets stuck again..." I jumped in. "Stuck talking to you, perhaps." Green's expression hardened. "Sir, fabricating an emergency to gain access can be prosecuted. Step back while we document." Bram retreated to his truck, revving the engine like a caged lawnmower. The deputies took my statement, advised me to file a harassment report, and left. The moment their cruiser disappeared, Bram's pickup re-emerged, cruising past at 5 miles an hour. His window rolled down. "You'll regret being unreasonable," he called and gunned away. That night I opened a fresh notebook titled Operation Castle Doctrine. Fen and I scheduled a coffee date to outline options: civil restraining order, HOA recall, small claim suit for harassment, even a petition to dissolve the association under the state's rarely used tyrannical conduct clause. But first, I needed leverage. Proof of misconduct more damning than a crank 911 call. Enter plotline number 2, the carriage barn. I hadn't done more than peek inside the barn since moving in. Its sliding doors groaned like a sea monster, and every surface wore an inch of dust. But the inspection report said the structure was sound, with separate utility meters dating back to when it served as a coach house apartment. If Bram lusted after square footage, the barn might tell me why. Monday morning, I popped the padlock, flicked on my flashlight, and inhaled sawdust flavored with faint diesel. Classic workbenches lined the walls. One corner held rusting oil drums. The real surprise sat behind a curtain of tarps, a stack of brand new boxes bearing logos of popular outdoor gear companies, the sort of merchandise someone might flip online for profit. Each shipping label listed Bram's address. My first instinct was disbelief. Second instinct, photograph everything. Shipping cartons, pallets, even the barn's dusty floor to show recent tire tracks. I checked the padlock. No signs of forced entry, just my brand new lock missing flakes of paint near the shackle, as if someone had practiced with a shim. Bram hadn't just covetously eyed my square footage, he'd already used it. Adrenaline propelled me into investigator mode. I dug through county property records and learned that 2 years earlier, the previous homeowner, a retired teacher, filed an incident report alleging unauthorized use of outbuildings by unknown party. The case closed unsolved. She passed away last fall and her estate sold me the house. The timing fit Bram's side hustle timeline like a puzzle piece. Fen and I met at Brood Awakening, our town's caffeinated courtroom. She skimmed my printed evidence while sipping an Americano. "You have him for breaking and entering, conversion, maybe even burglary," she said. "Plus violation of HOA fiduciary duty if he used his position for personal gain." "Doesn't sound like enough," I replied. "I want the board to implode so spectacularly no one tries this again." Fen's grin belonged in a Shark Week promo. "Then we trigger a special meeting and expose everything in front of the homeowners and ideally the sheriff. Is that legal?" "Fantastically so. We'll follow the bylaws to the letter. They love rules. We'll bury them in rules." Step 1. Serve the HOA board with a request for records under the state's Nonprofit Corporations Act. By law, they had 10 business days to comply. Fen drafted the request. I hand-delivered copies, filming the drop-offs for posterity. Step 2. File a criminal complaint about the barn inventory. The deputy on duty recognized my address before I finished my sentence. He took the evidence photos, logged the boxes as potential stolen goods, and promised an investigator would call. Step 3. Install signage. I ordered tasteful plaques reading "Private property, no trespassing," 24-hour audio and video. and mounted them at eye level on every approach. The local ordinance allows such signs if legible from 10 feet. Mine could be read from space. For 72 hours, silence, then came the email blast. Subject: emergency HOA meeting, violations by resident Larkin. Sent by Cressida, time-stamped 2:14 a.m. The message accused me of hostile surveillance, spurious legal threats, and abuse of shared community goodwill. It ordered me to appear Thursday night at the Recreation Hall, formerly a double garage painted beige with optimism. Failure to appear, it claimed, would incur daily fines of $500 until compliance. Fenn texted, "They set their own trap. Bring popcorn." I RSVP'd with counsel, printed the email, and added it to my dossier. Thursday evening, I arrived 10 minutes early with Fenn, Deputy Green, off duty by invitation, and 3 neighbors sympathetic to my cause. Jake, a software engineer, Mira, a nurse, and Tuffy, a retired firefighter who carried a tote bag of meeting minutes spanning a decade. Solid crew. Inside, folding chairs faced a folding table where Bram and Cressida sat like budget royalty. 20 homeowners clustered around, whispering as we took seats. Bram opened with a gavel. Yes, a literal wooden gavel from a novelty gift shop. He launched into a speech about community spirit and how my resistance threatened neighborhood harmony. Mid-tirade, Fenn raised her hand. Point of order. Before disciplining a member, the board must present evidence of a violation and allow rebuttal. Cressida waved a paper. "We have evidence, camera footage showing unauthorized installation of signs." She clicked a remote. A grainy clip appeared on a projector. Me with a drill, mounting my plaque. She smirked. I whispered to Fenn, "They spied on me while accusing me of spying?" Fenn's eyes sparkled. "Wait for it." My turn came. I stepped to the center, placed a USB stick on the projector laptop, and let the clip play. Time-stamped footage of Bram and an accomplice rolling pallets of merchandise into my barn at 2 a.m., 2 weeks before I closed on the house. Gasps rippled, then still images of the boxes, labels readable. I narrated calmly, citing sections of the criminal code dealing with burglary and theft of services. Deputy Green rose. "As advised by counsel, I'm delivering a notice of investigation regarding Mr. Bram's alleged activities. Mr. Bram, please accompany me outside." Bram stammered, I call recess." Green escorted him out. We heard a cruiser door thunk. Cressida tried to adjourn the meeting, but the homeowners erupted. Jake demanded financials. Mira waived Fenn's record request, noting its statutory deadline tomorrow. Tuffy produced minutes showing Bram's side hustle discussed in executive session months earlier. Without disclosure to members, the board's credibility crumbled like week-old cake. Cressida fled. Another board member moved to elect an interim committee pending a full recall. The motion passed unanimously, except for the empty seats of Bram and Cressida. Fenn whispered, "And that's checkmate in 3 acts." I exhaled for what felt like the first time all week, but I sensed the finale hadn't played yet. Bram wasn't the type to bow out gracefully. He'd already weaponized the 911 system. Who knew what came next? That suspense hummed in the back of my mind as I walked home under the streetlights. Keychain clutched tight. In the distance, a pickup engine revved, then sputtered, like a bad omen trying to clear its throat. The next morning brought a chill that had nothing to do with weather. I found a single white envelope taped to my mailbox, the handwriting so forceful it dented the paper. Inside was a photocopy of an online listing. Luxury craftsman storage space, climate-controlled, night security patrols included. Below the headline, in bold, "Available immediately, contact Bram." A red Sharpie arrow pointed to my street address, and under that the words, "You can't stop progress." I texted Fenn a photo. "Fenn, that man's audacity has its own zip code." Me, "Apparently it also has a leasing department." If Bram wanted to convince a judge he'd never planned to use my house as his warehouse, posting a rental ad blew holes in his defense big enough to park the pickup that revved outside my porch every night. I forwarded the ad to Deputy Green, then called the interim HOA chair, Jake, who sounded mortified. He swore the remaining board never authorized the listing and scheduled an emergency session to revoke Bram's membership. While that unfolded, plotline number 3 decided to pull up a chair. A mysterious utility bill addressed to warehouse tenant. The electric company, evidently relying on whatever fraudulent form Bram had filed, opened a new meter account at my address under that alias. The bill showed a projected usage 10 times higher than my own. Someone intended to crank the air conditioning as soon as they got a key. I drove to the utility office where customer service rep Daria listened wide-eyed as I explained. "So, your signature isn't on the application?" she asked. "Not unless I'm secretly ambidextrous and developed a fondness for glitter gel pens," I said, sliding the forged document across the counter. Daria excused herself to summon a supervisor. 10 minutes later, I was filing an affidavit of identity theft and requesting a fraud alert on all my utilities. The supervisor also printed security camera stills of the person who'd submitted the application. Grainy, but clear enough to recognize Bram's neon lanyard. That afternoon, Deputy Green called. "Good news first. The ad qualifies as further evidence of intent, so the prosecutor's office is leaning toward a burglary charge with enhancement. In our state, enhancement meant steeper penalties for breaking into a dwelling to commit theft. Bad news, Bram posted bail and is back in the neighborhood." I glanced out my turret window. The street looked normal. Kids chalk drawing hopscotch, a golden retriever doing perimeter checks on every lawn. But normal had become an illusion here. Green continued, "He's under a no-contact order, so if he steps on your property, dial 911 immediately." I thanked him and hung up, forcing myself to exhale. A rational person on bail would lay low until court. Bram, however, ran an e-commerce empire out of other people's square footage and mistook bylaws for buffet options. I doubted a protective order would slow him. Enter plotline number 4, the gate lock. At 3 a.m. Friday, I woke to the front camera's motion alert. I tapped the live feed. A hooded figure knelt by the wrought iron gate, fiddling with the keypad. Floodlights snapped on, bathing the yard in halogen glare. The hood jerked up, square jaw, unmistakable grimace, and sprinted to the sidewalk. I saved the footage, emailed it to Green, and then forced myself back to bed. Sleep came like a broken zipper. Brief, snagged, useless. By 7 a.m., I gave up, brewed coffee strong enough to jolt a sloth, and drafted a witness statement. 3 hours later, a cruiser parked outside. Detective Amara stepped out, a no-nonsense woman whose gaze suggested X-ray vision for bad decisions. She collected my statement, watched the video twice, and nodded. "We're adding attempted criminal trespass to the docket. Meanwhile, bolster your lighting and make sure every camera backs up to cloud storage." Already done. But I appreciated professional validation. Saturday dawned sticky and bright, and for the first time since moving in, the neighborhood kids avoided the sidewalk in front of my house. Their parents had apparently warned them the place was involved in legal affairs. Nothing dampens property values like an unfinished feud, so I decided to shift my role from embattled newcomer to proactive peacemaker, without yielding an inch of territory. I printed invitations to a porch swing meet and greet, iced tea, lemonade, cookies, open quanda about the situation. My theory? Misinformation thrives in the dark. Shine enough sunlight, and it withers. Mira dropped by early to help set up folding chairs and a snack table. Jake brought a Bluetooth speaker that played soft jazz. Even Fen arrived, surprising everyone by wearing an apron that read, "Lawyered and flowered" above a picture of a cupcake. By 2 p.m., 20 neighbors circled the porch. I explained the saga factually. The midnight vote, the forged utility documents, the barn inventory, the arrest. I showed no footage, only still images, because I wanted them to see me as a neighbor first, not a producer of gotcha reels. When I finished, a silence settled. Then Tuffy, the retired firefighter, cleared his throat. "Anybody still think she owes that man a key?" Heads shook. Someone started clapping. The applause spread until strangers were slapping me on the back like I'd scored a touchdown. Jake raised his lemonade, motioned to rename Bram's side hustle from e-commerce to econ artist. Laughter broke tension like glass under a dropped brick. Kids resumed chalk drawings. The golden retriever resumed perimeter duty. For the first time, the craftsman felt less like a fortress and more like the home I'd dreamed it could be. But a drama's heartbeat quickens before the climax, and mine thudded all Sunday afternoon when I saw a U-Haul idling outside Bram's driveway. He and a lanky accomplice loaded boxes, similar to those in my barn, into the truck, probably moving inventory to a new, undisclosed warehouse before detectives obtained a search warrant for his house. Around dusk, the U-Haul disappeared. 30 minutes later, my cameras detected motion in the alley behind the carriage barn. A figure, smaller than Bram, maybe the lanky accomplice, crept toward the side door carrying a pair of bolt cutters. I hit record, dialed dispatch, and narrated in real time. Location, mode of entry, description. The cut couldn't take more than 15 seconds, but the accomplice fumbled, trying to wedge the cutter's jaws around my reinforced padlock. Sirens wailed within 3 blocks. The would-be intruder bolted but ran straight into a cruiser rounding the corner. Officers recovered bolt cutters, gloves, and a crude, handwritten map of my property marking camera blind spots that no longer existed since my upgrades. A thumb drive labeled Backup Inventory poked from the intruder's pocket, a gift-wrapped bonus for evidence lockers everywhere. Deputy Green texted later. Accomplice's name is Dorian, Bram's cousin. Confessed Bram sent him to retrieve pending shipments to avoid seizure. Prosecutor is ecstatic. Monday delivered the courtroom scene every revenge story secretly craves. The bail review hearing took place in a cramped county annex, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like annoyed hornets. Fen and I sat behind the rail with a cadre of neighbors. Bram shuffled in wearing yesterday's dress shirt, its creases telling a story of a man who ironed once and deemed the skill mastered forever. The prosecutor presented the bolt cutter incident as a violation of bail conditions. She also submitted the forged utility application and the rental listing. Bram's attorney, court appointed because Bram's assets were frozen, argued this was all a misunderstanding. Bram was merely trying to protect his property from being illegally retained by me. The judge raised an eyebrow so high I feared it might detach. You claim the defendant owns items stored in the plaintiff's barn? Yes, Your Honor, the attorney said. My client was safeguarding his merchandise pursuant to verbal permission from the previous owner. I whispered to Fen, verbal permission from a deceased teacher, bold strategy. Fen scribbled Pirate Code of Conduct in her notebook and underlined it twice. The judge flipped through the case file, sighed, and ruled, bail is revoked. Defendant to be remanded pending trial. Additionally, I'm issuing a protective order extending to the plaintiff's property boundaries. Any further attempt to contact or delegate contact will result in contempt charges. 2 deputies escorted Bram out. A ripple of relief surged through the gallery. My heartbeat slowed for the first time in days. As we exited, Detective Amara approached. Search warrant for Bram's house turned up 26 more pallets and shipping logs dating back 18 months. Looks like he rented basements all over town under false pretenses. He's facing multiple counts across the county. You started the dominoes. I thanked her, mentally sending gratitude to every Amazon shopper who'd ever filed a missing package complaint. Their frustration now fed justice. Plotline number 5, the final strand, involved the HOA itself. With Bram behind bars and Cressida resigned, we still faced a crooked set of bylaws that had enabled the fiasco. The interim committee hired an outside consultant, an attorney specializing in homeowner rights reform, to overhaul the governing documents. Public meetings spanned 3 weekends, and each clause was dissected like a high school frog. What purpose did it serve? Whose interests and what safeguards prevented abuse? The infamous auxiliary storage amendment was scrapped. So were nuisance fines for grass exceeding 2 inches, because, as Jake noted, sometimes it rains nonstop. We added a sunshine clause. Any board meeting after 9 p.m. required 48 hours notice and recorded minutes available to every member. We also instituted term limits, so no one clung to lanyard power forever. Finally, a vote determined whether to keep the HOA at all. A supermajority opted to retain it, but with tighter boundaries. Focus on shared green spaces. Forget micromanaging paint shades. When the ballots were counted, neighbors applauded, not because they loved the concept of an HOA, but because they'd rebuilt it themselves. By mid-May, the case against Bram advanced swiftly. He pled guilty to multiple counts of burglary, forgery, and misusing the 911 system. The judge sentenced him to 4 years in state prison, restitution to every property owner he victimized, and mandatory business ethics courses upon release. Dorian received 18 months probation and community service, warehouse cleanup for a local food bank, poetic justice Fen deemed flawless. Restitution covered the cost of my upgraded security, plus a nuisance premium the prosecutor argued I deserved for enduring psychological stress. I earmarked that money for a neighborhood block party timed to celebrate the new bylaws taking effect. On a breezy Saturday afternoon, string lights crisscrossed the street as kids zoomed on bikes between sawhorse barricades. I set up a projector on the porch, streaming silent movies against a sheet. Fen griped about copyright law until she tasted Mira's triple berry pie and forgot the complaint. During the block party, Tuffy hoisted a red Solo cup. "To Larkin," he shouted, "who proved you don't need 6 bedrooms to stand tall." The cheer that followed was loud and warm, and for the first time since unlocking this door, I felt fully rooted. At dusk, the craftsman's shingles glowed bronze. Jake wandered over with cider. "Why'd you buy this monster?" I glanced at the turret, the porch swing, the carriage barn now holding exactly 0 stolen goods. "Stories need elbow room," I said. "Turns out people do too. Glad you chose us." He clinked my bottle, and laughter drifted like fireflies across the lawn. 2 weeks later, a letter from the Attorney General invited me to a victim impact roundtable on rogue HOAs. I emailed yes. If my bizarre saga could harden consumer laws, great. I spent the next days polishing bullet points with Fen, practicing answers to imaginary senators, and buying my first blazer since college. That night, curled in the turret, I wrote in my journal, "No one gets the keys to your life unless you hand them over. Sometimes the locks themselves are revenge." The house creaked contentedly, like an old dog settling by the fire. 4 honey-heavy months slipped by. Cousins crowded spare rooms, trivia nights packed the tower, and laughter echoed where anxiety once camped. Then, on a scorching August afternoon, the mail carrier brought a certified envelope thick as a field guide. Inside, notice of pending civil action, claim of unjust enrichment. Bram, filing pro se from lockup, wanted $250,000 for lost warehouse revenue. Co-defendants included the HOA board, 2 deputies, Fen and Sundance the golden retriever, listed as dog. Accomplice unknown. Fen flipped through the pages. "He's citing the Commerce Clause of the 4th Amendment." "Which doesn't exist," I said. "We'll move to dismiss, then request sanctions so he can't keep clogging the courts." She drafted the motion that night, typing with the fury of someone playing whack-a-mole. While legal papers flew, I attended the AG roundtable. Victims traded war stories. A couple fined for using their own driveway. A dad whose board trespassed to photograph a basketball hoop. My tale of the forged utility bill drew groans. Sundance's subpoena produced belly laughs. Draft legislation stiffening penalties for HOA abuse was unveiled. I spoke in favor, hands steady for the first time in a government building. Back home, the neighborhood chat, now called the Good Keys Club, buzzed with photos of Sundance in a necktie for his court date. Humor helped, but Bram's filing still hummed like distant machinery, so I poured the jitters into restoring the sealed turret balcony. Marisol and I replaced rotten wood with tempered glass, then found hidden ledgers from 1934 listing corn and rye deliveries, evidence the original owner moonshined. The Historical Society squealed with joy. September air turned sharp. Bram beamed into court via video, orange jumpsuit bright against cinder block walls. Asked for precedent proving I owed rent for goodwill lost to gossip. He cited People v. Defamation Clark, 1991, a case no reporter shows. The judge dismissed with prejudice, fined him $500 per defendant, and barred future suits without review. Outside, Sundance's owner shook a treat bag like victory confetti, while local news filmed a segment titled "The Dog Who Won a Lawsuit." 2 weeks later, the tax assessor tried to reclassify my property as mixed-use commercial, thanks to an anonymous tip. An inspection, and Jake's QR-coded affidavits on every doorway, cleared things. The assessor called the tip borderline malicious and advised me to frame the clearance certificate. Winter brought Bram's criminal sentencing. He drew 4 years, restitution, and counseling. In my statement, I said locks matter less than the courage behind them. Leaving the courthouse, I felt lighter, as though someone untied a sandbag from a hot air balloon. January fireworks welcomed the Homeowner Fairness Act, sparked partly by our testimony. Sundance snored under my snack table while neighbors toasted quieter days. A journalist visited later, scribbling in her notebook, "Every story is a lock. Patience is the key before departing with a plate of cinnamon rolls." Late September, dawn mist floated above roofs while sprinklers ticked and Sundance barked at phantoms. My phone pinged, prepped for the fall writing retreat. I touched the worn knob, murmured, "Locks keep danger out only if courage stays in," swung the gate wide because openness can also defend, and stepped into a morning that, unmistakably, belonged to me. Friends, thank you. See you soon.